Look at your shadow right now. Go ahead. I'll wait. You see it? That dark silhouette on the ground or the wall. According to Lakota tradition, that's not just physics and light. That's your Ohanko, your spirit companion. Proof that you have a soul. My name is David Tuelk. I'm the sheriff of Rosebud Sioux Territory in South Dakota. I've been wearing this badge for 12 years, protecting nearly 2,000 square miles of reservation land with just 9 deputies. Out here, I know every family, every road, every secret, except one. On this reservation, children born during blood moons don't cast shadows. Not in sunlight, not under street lamps, not ever. And those children, they never make it past their 12th birthday. My daughter Emma is one of them. She just turned 3 years old last month, which means I have 9 years to figure out what happens to these shadowless children. 9 years to solve a mystery that's been claiming kids for decades. In the past 20 years alone, 17 children have vanished at exactly age 12. All of them were born during blood moons. All of them without shadows. I know because I filed every single missing person report. I watched every family fall apart. Promised each one I'd find answers. I never did, because I didn't believe what the elders were telling me. I thought it was superstition. Grief makes people see patterns that weren't there. Until 6 months ago, when I finally admitted what I'd been ignoring since Emma was born. My daughter doesn't have a shadow. What I'm about to tell you about shadowless children will change how you think about light, darkness, and what it means to be human. Because I've spent 3 years watching my daughter grow up without a shadow. And I'm running out of time to understand why. I should start by telling you about the first time I realized Emma was different. The day I stood in our backyard under full sunlight and counted the shadows, mine, my wife's, our dogs. Everyone and everything cast one, except our 3-year-old daughter. I'm 38 years old, Sikangu Lakota, 3rd-generation law enforcement on Rosebud. My grandfather was a tribal police officer back in the 60s. My father was a deputy for 23 years before a drunk driver killed him on Highway 83. I grew up watching these men protect our community, and I knew from the time I was 10 that I'd wear a badge too. I became sheriff at 26, youngest ever elected on Rosebud. Some people said I was too young, too green, but I'd already spent 4 years as a deputy, and I knew this land, knew the families, knew which calls needed a soft approach and which ones needed backup. I married Sarah Blackbird 5 years ago. She teaches 3rd grade at the reservation school in Mission. Smart, strong, keeps me grounded when the job gets heavy. We bought a small house on the east side of town. I started trying for kids right away. Emma came 3 years ago during a blood moon. We weren't expecting her that night. Sarah was only 36 weeks along. But around 10 p.m., her water broke. The contractions came fast and hard. By the time we got to the Indian Health Service Hospital in Rosebud, the lunar eclipse was already starting. I remember standing in the parking lot, helping Sarah out of the truck, and looking up at the moon turning deep red, like rust, like blood. The delivery had complications. Sarah hemorrhaged. They almost lost her. For 20 minutes, I sat in that waiting room not knowing if my wife would survive. The doctors stabilized her. And at 11:47 p.m., under a full blood moon, Emma Tuelk came into this world. Perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Healthy lungs. She screamed for 10 minutes straight.
10 fingers, 10 toes.
Beautiful. Normal. For 3 years, she was just our daughter. Smart, funny, loved dogs and cartoons and mac and cheese. She hit every milestone on time. I walked for 13 months. First words at 18 months. Potty trained by 2.5. I didn't notice the shadow thing at first. Why would I? You don't go around checking if your kid has a shadow. It's not something you think about. But 6 months ago, something made me look. We were in the backyard. Summer afternoon, sun directly overhead. I was grilling burgers. Sarah was reading on the porch. Emma was playing in her sandbox. And I looked down and saw my shadow, long and dark on the grass. Saw Sarah's shadow stretched across the porch boards. Saw the dog's shadow trotting across the yard. Emma was 10 feet away, in full sunlight. No trees overhead.
No sabe.
Nothing blocking the light.
No shadow.
I blinked, rubbed my eyes. I looked again. Still no shadow. I walked over to her, stood right next to her. My shadow was clear as day on the sand. Emma wasn't there. I thought I was losing my mind. Stress from the job, maybe. Too many late shifts. I didn't say anything to Sarah, but I started documenting it. Taking photos,
Videos.
different times of day. Morning, noon, evening. Indoors under lamps, outdoors in sunlight. In the car with the dome light on. At the grocery store under fluorescent lights. Every photo showed the same thing. Emma.
No shadow.
I have over 200 photos now. Every single one proves it. When I finally showed Sarah, she got angry. Told me I was being paranoid. Said it was a trick of the light, the camera angle, something wrong with my phone. She refused to look at the evidence. Refused to even discuss it. I get it. She's protecting herself. If she admits Emma doesn't have a shadow, she has to admit something's wrong with our daughter. Something she can't fix with doctor visits or medicine. But I've been a cop for 16 years. I'm trained to observe, to trust what I see, to follow evidence. And the evidence tells me my 3-year-old daughter doesn't cast a shadow. That's when I started remembering. Kids from when I was growing up. There was a boy named Marcus, 2 grades ahead of me. I remember him because other kids used to tease him during recess. Called him Shadow Boy. Said he didn't have one. I thought they were just being cruel. Kids making up reasons to bully the quiet kid. Marcus disappeared the summer he turned 12. They found his bike by the highway. Never found him. There was a girl named Teresa. She was in my sister's class. Same thing, other kids whispered about her shadow. She vanished at 12. They said she ran away. 3 others I could name. All gone at 12. All the subject of strange rumors when they were younger. I dismissed it as reservation gossip. People seeing patterns in tragedy. But now I can't dismiss it anymore. I went down to the station archives. Started pulling old missing person files. Went back 30 years. 17 children. All reported missing between the ages of 12 and 13. I cross-referenced with birth records. Every single one was born during a blood moon. Lunar eclipses happen roughly every 18 months. Sometimes 2 in 1 year. Sometimes none. But the pattern was there. And in the case files, some families had included photos of the missing children. School pictures, family portraits, birthday parties. I looked at those photos closely. used a magnifying glass, enhanced them digitally. In every single photo where you could see the ground or a wall behind the child, no shadow. Not in any of them. The families knew. They'd always known. They just never said it out loud. Never put it in their statements. How do you tell a sheriff that your child was taken because they didn't have a shadow? How do you explain that to someone who deals in evidence and logic? But now I was that sheriff. And now it was my daughter. I needed answers. So I did what any good investigator would do. I went to the person who's been on this reservation longer than anyone. Elder Joseph Runs Fast, 92 years old, keeper of oral histories, the man who knows every story, every legend, every truth we try to forget. I found him at his home near St. Francis, sitting on his porch like he'd been expecting me. Joseph Runs Fast lived in a small house on the outskirts of St. Francis, about 15 miles south of Mission. The place was old but well kept. Traditional star quilt hanging on the porch. Sage bundles drying under the eaves. A garden out back where he grew tobacco for ceremonies. He was sitting in a wooden chair on the porch when I pulled up. Didn't move. Didn't look surprised. Just watched me get out of my truck and walk across his yard. "Sheriff Two Elk," he said in Lakota. His voice was strong for a man his age. "You're here about the shadowless children." Not a question. A statement. I stopped at the bottom of his porch steps. "How did you know?" "Because you have a daughter born 3 years ago during the blood moon. And now you've finally noticed what's been true since her birth." He gestured to the chair next to him. "Sit. We need to talk about Ohanko." I sat down. My hands were shaking slightly. I laced them together to hide it. Joseph was quiet for a moment, looking out at the prairie grass swaying in the wind. Then he spoke. "In our tradition, every person has an Ohanko, a shadow. But it's not just what happens when light hits your body. It's your spirit companion, the part of you that exists between the physical world and the spirit world. Everyone is born with one. It's proof you have a soul, proof you're human." He turned to look at me with eyes that had seen 92 years of life on this reservation. But during blood moons, the veil between worlds thins. The barrier that keeps the physical and spiritual separate becomes weak. And sometimes when a baby is born during that time, something goes wrong. The body comes through to our world, but the shadow, the soul, stays on the other side. "That's not possible," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. "You've seen it with your own eyes. Your daughter has no shadow. You've documented it, photographed it. You came here because you know I'm telling the truth." He was right. I had come here for answers, not arguments. "Why?" I asked. "Why does it happen?" "Because there's something on the other side that catches them. Something old. Something that lives in darkness and has been waiting for a very long time. During blood moons, when the veil thins, it reaches through, and it claims the shadows of babies being born. Keep them on the other side." My throat felt tight. "Claim them for what?" "That I don't fully know. But I know this: the children grow normally for 12 years. They seem healthy, happy, human, but they're incomplete, living with only half of what makes them whole. And at 12 years old, when a child transitions into adulthood in our tradition, they reach a spiritual threshold. That's when the shadows call them back. Call them back where? To wherever they actually belong. to whatever has been holding their shadows for 12 years. But during blood moons, the veil between worlds thins. The barrier that keeps the physical and spiritual separate becomes weak. And sometimes when a baby is born during that time, something goes wrong. The body comes through to our world, but the shadow, the soul, stays on the other side. That's not possible, I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. You've seen it with your own eyes. Your daughter has no shadow. You've documented it, photographed it. You came here because you know I'm telling the truth. He was right. I had come here for answers, not arguments. Why? I asked. Why does it happen? Because there's something on the other side that catches them. Something old. Something that lives in darkness and has been waiting for a very long time. During blood moons, when the veil thins, it reaches through, and it claims the shadows of babies being born. Keep them on the other side. My throat felt tight. Claim them for what? That I don't fully know. But I know this, the children grow normally for 12 years. They seem healthy, happy.
Humans.
But they're incomplete, living with only half of what makes them whole. And at 12 years old, when a child transitions into adulthood in our tradition, they reach a spiritual threshold. That's when the shadows call them back. Call them back where? To wherever they actually belong. To whatever has been holding their shadows for 12 years. Joseph pulled out a pouch of tobacco and began rolling it between his palms. A prayer gesture. This has been happening for hundreds of years, Sheriff. Since before the reservation. Since before the white man came. My grandfather told me stories his grandfather told him. Stories about children who walked into the Badlands and never returned. Children who left no footprints. Children who seemed to disappear into the shadows. 17 children in the last 30 years, I said. All vanished at age 12. I pulled the files. And there were 17 before that. And 17 before that. The pattern continues. Always has. Always will. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So what happens to them? Where do they go? They're called back to wherever their shadows are. The physical body must reunite with the spiritual shadow. At 12, the calling becomes too strong to resist. They walk to the place where the veil is thinnest, and they cross over. 2D? To become whole, but no longer human. Not in the way we understand it. I stood up, suddenly angry. No, there has to be another explanation. Medical, scientific, something. Joseph looked up at me with profound sadness. You're a good sheriff, David. You protect this community with laws and badges and handcuffs. But you can't arrest what's taking these children. You can't save them with warrants and evidence. This isn't a reservation law. This is an older law, spirit law, and it doesn't care about your badge. I don't accept that. Emma is my daughter. I'm not going to sit back and let some legend take her when she turns 12. Every parent says that, and every parent loses anyway. I started to turn away, but Joseph's next words stopped me cold. Have you ever seen your daughter in a mirror, Sheriff? I froze, turned back slowly. What? A mirror? Have you looked at Emma in a mirror? Really? I thought about it. Bathroom mirrors, store windows, reflective surfaces. Couldn't remember. Sarah always gave Emma baths. Got her ready in the mornings. I was usually working. I don't know. Mirrors show truth. Joseph said quietly. They show what's really there, not what we want to see. If you want to understand what your daughter is, look at her in a mirror. Soon, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, handed it to me, an address in Parmalee, 40 miles west. Margaret White Buffalo. Her son was shadowless, born during the blood moon in 1994. He disappeared at 12 just like the others, but Margaret has seen him since. Many times. She knows more than I do. She's seen where they go. I took the paper, my hand shaking again. Joseph looked at me with eyes full of ancient sorrow. Your daughter came through the veil during the blood moon. Her body arrived here, but her shadow, her soul, stayed on the other side. And at 12 years old, when her spirit would normally mature into adulthood, that other side will call her back. Because Sheriff, she doesn't belong to you. She never did. She belongs to Anyakite. That name hit me like a physical blow. Anyakite. I knew it from childhood stories. The two-faced spirit. One face beautiful, one face hideous. A being that exists between worlds, seeing both truth and lies simultaneously. That's just a legend, I said weakly. A story. Is it? You're holding proof that the stories are real. Your daughter has no shadow. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer. I left Joseph's house with more questions than I'd arrived with. But one thing he'd said kept echoing in my mind. Look at her in the mirror. I drove home with my head spinning. Anyakite. I knew that name from childhood stories. A two-faced spirit, one face beautiful, one face hideous. Sees both truth and deception. Lives between worlds. But those were legends. Stories to scare kids. I needed evidence. Real evidence. So I did what Joseph suggested. That night, while Sarah was cooking dinner, I took Emma to the bathroom, stood her in front of the mirror, and I looked. That night, Sarah was making spaghetti in the kitchen. Emma was watching cartoons in the living room. I could hear her laughing at something on the screen. Normal. Everything looked normal. I walked into the living room. Hey, Emma, come with Daddy for a second. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes. Okay, Daddy. She took my hand and I led her down the hallway to the bathroom. Flipped on the light. The fluorescent bulb hummed overhead, casting bright white light across the tile floor. We're gonna play a game, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Stand right here in front of the mirror with me. Emma giggled. Okay. I positioned her in front of the sink, then stood behind her. Both of us facing the mirror. First, everything looked normal. I saw myself. Tired eyes, 5 o'clock shadow. My sheriff's uniform rumpled from a long shift. Behind me, the bathroom, shower curtain, towel rack, the little shelf where Sarah kept her lotions. And I saw Emma, 3 years old, wearing her favorite pink shirt with the unicorn on it. Her black hair in 2 braids that Sarah had done that morning. Normal. Then Emma smiled at me in the mirror, and her reflection smiled back. But it wasn't the same smile. Emma's real smile, the one I saw when I looked down at her actual face, was innocent, sweet. My little girl is happy to be playing a game with her dad. But the smile in the mirror was different, wider. The corners of her mouth stretched too far. And there was something in that smile that shouldn't be in a 3-year-old's expression. Knowledge, awareness, something old. I blinked. sure I was seeing things. When I opened my eyes, Emma's reflection was looking directly at me. Not at mirror me. Actually, me. Like the reflection knew the difference between the real world and the mirror world. And her eyes went black. Not just the pupils. Everything. The whites, the iris, all of it. Just solid black, like staring into deep water at night. I stumbled backward, my shoulder hitting the doorframe. "Daddy!" Emma turned around, looking at me with normal eyes, concerned. "You okay?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move. "Daddy, you look scared." She walked over and hugged my leg. "Normal. Sweet. My daughter." I looked back at the mirror. Emma's reflection was normal again. Regular eyes. Regular smile. Just a 3-year-old standing in a bathroom. "I'm okay, sweetie," I managed. Just dizzy for a second. But Emma wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the mirror, staring at it. And then she smiled and waved. "Emma, who are you waving at?" "The other me, Daddy." She says hi. My blood went cold. "What?" Emma turned back to me, completely casual. "The other me. She's in there." She pointed at the mirror. "She's always in there." I knelt down to her level. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Emma, sweetie, what do you mean the other you?" "The other me. She looks like me but darker. She lives where there's no light. We talk sometimes." You talk to her?" "Ah, she's nice. She tells me stories." My hands were shaking. "What kind of stories?" "About where she lives. It's dark there, but she says it's not scary. She says it's home. She says when I'm big like the big kids at school, I get to go live with her there. She's waiting for me." The room felt like it was tilting. "How long have you been talking to her?" "Emma?" Emma thought for a second, then started counting on her fingers. Gave up and just shrugged. "Always, Daddy. Since I was born. She's always been there." I pulled Emma into a hug, holding her tight. Over her shoulder, I looked at the mirror. For just a second, just 1 second, I saw the reflection smile at me again. That too wide smile. Those black eyes. Then it was gone. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Sarah while she breathed deeply, peaceful and unaware. Down the hall, Emma was in her room, probably sleeping soundly. But all I could think about was what she'd said. "Since I was born, Daddy. My 3-year-old daughter has been talking to something in mirrors since she was born. Something that's been waiting patiently, introducing itself, preparing her. And the worst part? She's not scared of it. She talks about the other me the same way she talks about her imaginary friends. Because to Emma, that thing in the darkness is normal. It's always been there. How many times had she stood in front of mirrors in our house? In stores? In car windows? Having conversations with something we couldn't see? How many times had Sarah or I walked past and thought she was just playing? Just talking to herself the way little kids do. We'd missed it. For 3 years, we'd missed it. At 2 a.m., I got out of bed, went to my home office, pulled up the case files I'd copied from the station. 17 missing children over 30 years. I needed to know if other shadowless children experienced the same thing. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I pulled the personnel files of every family that reported a missing shadowless child in the last 15 years. Found the parents who still lived on the reservation. Started making house calls. Unofficial. Off the record. just asking questions. Over the next 2 weeks, I made 5 house calls. 5 families who'd lost shadowless children in the past 15 years. Families who still lived on the reservation, still carried the weight of those disappearances. The first family was the Blackhorns. They lived in a small house on the north side of Mission. Carl and Rita Blackhorn. Their son Michael had disappeared 7 years ago at age 12. Rita invited me in, made coffee. We sat at her kitchen table while Carl stood by the window, arms crossed, not saying much. Michael was born during the blood moon in October 2011, Rita said quietly. I remember because the nurses kept talking about it. How red the moon was. How unusual. Did you notice anything different about him growing up? I asked. He never had a shadow. We noticed early, maybe when he was 2, but we didn't know what it meant. The elders would look at him strangely sometimes, but nobody said anything directly. Not until he got older. How old? Around 9 or 10. That's when he started spending a lot of time in front of mirrors, talking to himself. At first we thought it was normal kid stuff, imaginary friends, but it got more intense. He'd stand in the bathroom for an hour, just staring, having full conversations with someone we couldn't see. Carl spoke up from the window. He started drawing pictures too, always the same thing. Rita got up and went to a drawer, pulled out a folder. Inside were children's drawings. She spread them on the table. My stomach turned. Every drawing showed the same scene. Stick figure children standing in darkness. And next to each child, a tall shadow figure. No details.
No faces.
Just dark silhouettes holding hands with the children. He drew these the week before he disappeared, Rita said. We asked him what they were. He said they were his friends, the ones waiting for him. How did he disappear? Carl turned from the window, his jaw tight. From his bedroom, middle of the night, door locked from the inside, the window closed and latched. No signs of forced entry.
No struggle.
We woke up at 6 a.m. and he was just gone. We called the tribal police immediately, Rita added. They searched everywhere, never found a trace.
No footprints.
No tire tracks. Nothing. Like he vanished into the air. I looked at the drawings again. Those tall shadow figures holding hands with children. The second family was the Whirlwinds. Grace Whirlwind lived alone now. Her husband had left 5 years ago and couldn't handle the grief. Their daughter Lily had disappeared at 12, 8 years ago. Grace was more direct than Rita, harder, like she'd processed her pain and come out the other side made of stone. You want to know about shadowless children, she said. It wasn't a question. Your daughter's one. I can see it on your face. I nodded. She poured us both whiskey. Straight. No ice. We drank in silence for a moment. Lily was born during the blood moon in 2010. Never cast a shadow her whole life. We knew. Everyone knew. The elders would whisper when we walked by. But what were we supposed to do? She was our daughter. We loved her. What happened at age 12? Grace stared into her whiskey glass. Same as all of them. She started talking to mirrors more, drawing pictures of dark places, shadows with no bodies. She'd tell us stories about the other side, where it was always night but not scary. She said she had friends there, friends who looked like her but were made of darkness. And when she disappeared, June 15th, 2016, her 12th birthday, we had a party that afternoon. Family, friends, cake. She seemed happy, normal. That night, she went to bed at 9. By midnight, she was gone. The bedroom door is open. No note, no signs of where she went. Grace downed the rest of her whiskey, poured another. But that's not the worst part, Sheriff. I waited. 3 weeks later, I was driving home from Rapid City, late, after midnight, taking Highway 83 through the empty stretches. No other cars for miles. And I saw her. My skin prickled. Saw who? Lily. Standing on the side of the highway, just standing there in the darkness. I'm still 12 years old, still wearing the same clothes she disappeared in, her favorite purple hoodie and jeans. Grace's hand shook slightly as she raised the glass. I slammed on the brakes, pulled over, got out of the car and ran toward her, calling her name, crying. I thought maybe she'd been lost. Maybe she was trying to find her way home. She paused, took a breath. She looked at me, and her eyes were black, completely black. No white, no iris, just darkness. And she smiled, this peaceful smile. And she said, "I'm home now, Mom. This is where I belong." What did you do? I tried to grab her, tried to pull her to the car, but she stepped back, just one step, and she was farther away than she should have been. Like distance didn't work right around her. She kept backing up, slowly, still smiling, and then the darkness just swallowed her. She walked backward into the shadows and was gone. Grace looked at me with hollow eyes. I tried to follow, ran into the prairie darkness, screaming her name, but there was nothing.
No trace. No footprints.
Just empty land. I interviewed 3 more families over the following days. The Stans, who lost their son Nathan 6 years ago. The Tall Bulls, who lost their daughter Marie 4 years ago. The Good Voices, who lost their son Isaiah just 2 years ago. Every story was the same. Born during blood moons.
No shadows.
Normal until age 8 or 9. Then increasing mirror behavior. Drawings of darkness. Conversations with invisible friends. And at 12 they vanished. Bedroom doors left open or locked from inside. No signs of struggle, just gone. And one family, the Tall Bulls, had seen their daughter after her disappearance too, standing in a field during a thunderstorm at night. Still 12, still unchanged. She'd waved at them, then turned and walked into the darkness like it was a doorway. I sat in my truck after the last interview, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd learned. These children weren't dead. They weren't kidnapped in any conventional sense. They were somewhere else, somewhere close enough that families could occasionally see them, but somewhere fundamentally different from our world. Grace Whirlwind's words echoed in my mind. When I saw my daughter on that highway, she wasn't scared. She wasn't crying. She was peaceful, like she'd finally gone home after a long trip. That's what terrified me most, Sheriff. She chose it. Whatever took her, she wanted to go. That's when I understood. The shadowless children aren't being kidnapped. They're being called home, to wherever their shadows have been living without them for 12 years. But where was that? And was there any way to stop it? I needed to talk to Margaret White Buffalo, The woman Joseph Runs Fast had mentioned. The woman who claimed she'd been seeing her shadowless son regularly for 30 years. If anyone knew the truth about where these children went, it was her. Margaret White Buffalo lived 30 miles south of Mission in a trailer so old it had rust patterns shaped like continents. She was 68 years old, hadn't left her property in a decade. People said she was crazy, that losing her son broke her mind. But when I pulled up to her place and she stepped out onto her porch, she looked at me with eyes that were completely sane and said, "You're here about the shadowless children. Your daughter is one. And you want to know if you can save her." She knew. Before I said a word. Margaret White Buffalo's trailer was a shrine. That's the only way to describe it. Every wall, every surface, covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All of the same boy, Benjamin White Buffalo, age 12, forever 12. The photos were taken in different locations, dirt roads, prairie fields, rocky outcrops in the Badlands. Different seasons, different weather, but always at night, always with Benjamin standing alone, looking at the camera with eyes that reflected light like an animal's. In every single photo, he looked exactly the same. Same height, same face, same clothes, even jeans and a red hoodie. "Sit down, Sheriff," Margaret said, gesturing to a worn couch. "I'll make coffee." I sat, unable to stop staring at the walls. Photo after photo after photo. 30 years of documentation. 30 years of a boy who never aged. Margaret brought 2 mugs of coffee and sat across from me in a recliner that had seen better days. Benjamin was born October 23, 1994. She began without prompting. Blood moon. I nearly died during the delivery, just like your wife nearly did. The doctors said it was a miracle we both survived. She sipped her coffee. I noticed he had no shadow when he was about 18 months old. We were in the backyard and I saw mine, saw the dogs, saw the shadow from the fence. But not Benjamin's. I thought I was going crazy. Asked my husband if he saw it. He got angry, told me to stop being paranoid. Her eyes went distant. Benjamin grew up normal. Smart kid. I love baseball. But around age 10, he started spending more time alone. Talking to mirrors. Drawing pictures of dark places. And he'd tell me stories about his friends. The shadow friends. Said they were waiting for him to get older so he could visit them. What happened when he turned 12? June 2nd, 2006. His birthday. We had a party. Cake. Presents. Family. That night he came to me. Said he needed to go somewhere. Said his friends were calling him. I didn't understand. Thought he wanted to go to a sleepover or something. But he said no. He had to go to the place where the shadows live. She set down her coffee cup, hands shaking slightly. I thought he was being dramatic. Told him to go to bed. But he looked at me with these serious eyes and said, "Mom, I have to go. My shadow has been waiting my whole life. It's time to become whole." And then he just walked out the front door. I ran after him. He was walking across the prairie toward the Badlands. Walking fast. I couldn't keep up. "Did you call the police?" Of course. They searched for 3 days. Never found him. Everyone assumed he'd been taken. Kidnapped. Lost in the wilderness. But I knew. I knew he'd gone to them. To the shadows. She stood up and walked to the wall, touching one of the more recent photos. 2 months later, I saw him. I was driving near CUNY Table at night, and there he was, standing by the side of the road. Same age, same clothes. I stopped, got out, called his name. He smiled at me, this peaceful smile, and he said, "Hi, Mom.
I'm okay.
I'm where I belong now." What did you do? I tried to grab him, tried to pull him into the car, but he stepped back and said, "I can't come back, Mom. I'm not the same anymore, but I can show you where I am, if you want to see." And I said yes. Of course I said yes. Margaret returned to her chair, eyes wet with tears that didn't fall. He led me to a place in the Badlands, a canyon that's not on any map. It's southeast of Sheep Mountain Table, hidden between rock formations. During the day, it looks like any other canyon. But at night, she paused, searching for words. It's not another dimension or spirit world like you're thinking. It's here, right here in our world, in the Badlands. But at night, in that canyon, shadows exist without anything casting them. Walk through that canyon and you'll see them. Hundreds of shadows, walking, moving, living their own lives. But no bodies, no light source, just the shadows themselves. My mouth was dry. That's where the shadowless children go. Yes, when they turn 12, they're called there. Their bodies walk to that canyon, and they merge with their shadows. The part of them that stayed on the other side during their birth finally reunites with the part that's been living in our world. They become whole again, but they stop being human. Yes, they become something else. Shadow beings that exist in both light and dark, belonging fully to neither. Benjamin has shown himself to me dozens of times over the years. Always in remote places, always at night. He seems happy, content, but he's not my son anymore. Not really. He's something wearing Benjamin's shape. I leaned forward. Can the merging be prevented? Can I keep Emma from... You'd be stopping her from becoming whole, Margaret interrupted. She's incomplete right now, Sheriff. Living with only half of what she should be. The merging isn't death. It's completion. But yes, the transformation changes them fundamentally. I don't care about completion. I care about keeping my daughter human, keeping her with me. Margaret's expression hardened. You think you're the first parent to say that? You think other families haven't tried to stop it? What happened to them? The shadows came anyway, but violently. She pulled out another photo from a drawer, showed it to me. It was dark, blurry, but I could make out what looked like shadow figures pouring through the walls of a house. Dozens of them, moving like smoke. The Charging Eagle family, 2009. Their daughter Sarah was shadowless. When she turned 12, they locked her inside their house, boarded up the windows, kept her in the center of the living room with candles and prayers. Thought they could stop the calling. Margaret's voice dropped. At midnight, the shadows came. Through the walls, through the ceiling, through solid matter. Sarah screamed. The family tried to fight them off. But you can't fight shadows. They dragged her through the house, through the walls, and she was gone. 3 days later, she appeared to her mother near the canyon. Still 12, still in her pajamas, black eyes, and she said, "You made it hurt, Mom. It didn't have to hurt." I felt sick. Margaret showed me another photo. Benjamin standing in what looked like Sheep Mountain Table in the Badlands. But behind him, clearly visible in the starlight, dozens of shadow children, all around his age, all standing perfectly still, facing the same direction, like they were waiting for something, or watching something we couldn't see. Margaret whispered, "They're always watching the border between their world and ours, waiting for the next one to cross over. They remember being human, but they don't want to come back. They want more to join them." I stared at that photo. All those children, frozen at 12 forever, living as shadows, happy in their incomprehensible existence. Is there any way to stop it? I asked desperately. Any ceremony? Any ritual? Anything? Margaret looked at me with profound sadness. There was someone who tried. A spiritual advisor from Pine Ridge named Thomas Lone Hill. 10 years ago, he performed a ceremony at the Shadow Canyon, tried to close the passage between worlds, tried to prevent any more children from crossing over. What happened? It didn't work. Obviously, the shadow children are still being called. But Thomas survived the attempt. He might know why it failed. He might know if there's any other way. She wrote down a phone number on a piece of paper, handed it to me. But Sheriff, before you go trying to fight cosmic forces you don't understand, ask yourself this. Is Emma suffering? Or are you? I didn't have an answer for that. I asked Margaret for exact coordinates to the Shadow Canyon. She refused, said if I went there during daylight, I'd see nothing. The shadows only appear at night. And if I went at night, they'd recognize me, the father of a shadowless child, and they'd follow me home. They'd call Emma early, before her time. But she gave me something else. The name of a man who'd been to the canyon and survived. A spiritual advisor from Pine Ridge named Thomas Lone Hill. He'd performed a ceremony there 10 years ago. I'm not asking you to fight anything. I just want to know if there's a way to save my daughter, to keep her human, to stop her from being taken at 12. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak, and his words carried the weight of ancient knowledge. Anyakite is not a demon, not an evil spirit, not something that can be banished or destroyed. Anyakite is a force of balance. In our cosmology, everything has two sides, light and dark, life and death, human and spirit. Anyakite exists at the boundary between these things, the threshold, the guardian of balance. He leaned forward. Shadowless children are born when the blood moon creates a crack in that boundary. The veil thins, and sometimes a baby's shadow, their spiritual half, slips through to the other side before the body is born. Anyakite catches those shadows, raises them in the shadow realm. Protect them. Protect them. I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. By stealing them? By keeping them whole on the other side until the body can reunite with them. Sheriff, a person without their shadow is incomplete. Half a being. Your daughter has been living in agony for 3 years, even if she can't articulate it. That wrongness she feels, that emptiness, it's the absence of her spiritual half. She seems fine, happy. Children are resilient. They adapt. But at age 12, when the spirit transitions from childhood to adulthood in our tradition, the body and shadow must reunite. It's cosmic law. If they don't merge, both will die. The body without the shadow without the body. Anyakite isn't cruel. Anyakite is maintaining balance. I shook my head. There has to be another way. A ceremony. A ritual. Something to bring Emma's shadow back to our world so they can reunite here. So she stays human. Thomas's expression was sad. I tried that. 10 years ago. He stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the prairie. A father came to me. His son was shadowless, about to turn 12. The father was desperate, begged me to perform a ceremony to close the passage, to seal the crack so the shadows couldn't call the children back. I told him it wouldn't work, but he was willing to pay anything, do anything. So I agreed. Thomas turned back to face me. We went to Shadow Canyon at night, the place where the shadows gather. I brought everything, sacred items, prayers, offerings. We performed a binding ritual, tried to seal the boundary between worlds. I tried to stop the calling. What happened? Anyakite appeared. The way Thomas said it sent chills down my spine. It manifested as a figure 10 feet tall. 2 faces. On one side was a beautiful Lakota woman with kind eyes. The other side was exposed bone and rotting flesh. Corpse face. And it spoke in 2 voices simultaneously, one gentle, one harsh. Both saying the same words. Thomas's hands were shaking slightly. It said, "You cannot seal what must remain open. Balance requires passage. The shadows belong to me. The bodies belong to you. At 12, they must choose." Then it showed us the truth. What truth? The shadow children in the canyon. Hundreds of them, all around age 12. All merged with their shadows. All complete. And Sheriff, they were happy. Genuinely happy. They'd chosen to merge because living incomplete for 12 years is agony. The children don't understand it cognitively, but they feel it. A constant wrongness. An emptiness they can't name. The calling isn't kidnapping. It's mercy. I felt like the room was spinning. Anyakite told me that if we tried to prevent the merging, it would take the children anyway. But violently, dramatically, it sent me back with a message. If you love them, let them go. If you cage them, I will take them anyway, and they will suffer. Thomas returned to his chair, looking exhausted. The father I was with, he didn't listen. He tried to lock his son in a basement when the boy turned 12. The shadows came through solid walls, dragged the boy screaming into the darkness. 3 months later, the father hanged himself. Couldn't live with what he'd done, with making his son's transition violent when it could have been peaceful. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. Your daughter feels that emptiness right now, Sheriff. She's 3 and doesn't have words for it. But she feels incomplete. That's why she talks to her shadow in the mirror. It's the only time she feels whole, when she sees both parts of herself. At 12, she'll be given the choice to become whole. And every shadowless child chooses yes. Every single one. She's my daughter, I said, my voice breaking. I can't just let her go. There has to be another way. Every parent says that, Thomas replied sadly. Then they lose their child twice. Once to the shadows, once to madness trying to prevent it. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded map. We opened it on the table between us. It showed the Badlands with a location marked in red ink. This is Shadow Canyon. If you want to understand what you're dealing with, go there. See the shadow children with your own eyes. See if they're suffering or free. Then decide. When should I go? At night. The shadows only appear after dark. But Sheriff, he looked at me intently. If you go there, Anyakite will know. You'll be marked as a shadow parent. The entity will recognize you, and it might accelerate Emma's calling. She might be taken before 12. Before you're ready. I need to see it. I need to understand. Thomas nodded slowly. I thought you'd say that. Every shadow parent does. He stood up, went to his altar, and returned with a small leather pouch. Handed it to me. Tobacco, sage, and corn pollen. Traditional protection. It won't stop Anyakite if the entity decides to act. But it might keep the shadow children from following you home. I took the pouch. Thomas looked at me with profound sadness and said, "Every shadow parent who learns the truth faces the same choice. Accept that your child was never fully yours, or fight to keep them and watch Anyakite take them violently. There's no third option. I've seen 12 families make that choice in my lifetime. The ones who let go, they grieve but they heal. The ones who fight, I've been to their funerals, Sheriff. 3 of them died by suicide within a year, or went insane. 1 tried to burn down the canyon and died in the fire. Your daughter came into this world incomplete. At 12, she'll either reunite with her shadow peacefully, or Anyakite will drag her there screaming. Which death do you want her to have?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer. I left Pine Ridge with Thomas's words echoing in my head. That night, I lay in bed next to Sarah while she slept peacefully, unaware that our daughter was already half gone. Emma was down the hall, probably talking to her shadow in the darkness. And I made a decision. I had to see Shadow Canyon. I had to see the children there with my own eyes. See if they were prisoners or if they'd truly chosen freedom. Because if there was even a 1% chance I could save Emma, keep her human, keep her mine, I had to try. Even if it meant being marked by Anyakite. Even if it accelerated the calling. I'm her father. It's my job to protect her, even from cosmic forces I don't understand. I took 3 days to prepare. Told Sarah I was doing overnight patrols in the northern districts, checking on isolated families. She didn't question it. I'd done overnight shifts before. She kissed me goodbye, told me to be safe, and asked me to call when I could. I hated lying to her. But how could I explain where I was really going? How could I tell her I was driving into the Badlands to visit a canyon where our daughter's shadow had been living for 3 years? I spent those 3 days studying maps, old geological surveys from the 1800s, modern satellite imagery. Thomas had given me general coordinates, and Margaret had described landmarks. I cross-referenced everything until I found it. An unnamed canyon southeast of Sheep Mountain Table. It appeared on territorial maps from 1887. Just a thin line between rock formations, unmarked, unnamed. But on modern maps, USGS surveys, Google Earth, GPS databases, it didn't exist. The canyon had been erased, or hidden. I loaded my truck with supplies, flashlight, extra batteries, emergency blanket, first aid kit, water, food. My service weapon, even though I knew bullets wouldn't matter here. And the traditional items Thomas had given me, tobacco, sage, corn pollen, the small leather pouch of protection. I left at dawn on the 4th day, drove east through Rosebud, then south into the Badlands. The landscape changed as I drove, prairie grass giving way to eroded rock formations, sharp ridges, deep gullies. The Badlands are beautiful and terrible. a maze of stone carved by wind and water over millions of years. I reached the Sheep Mountain Table around 4 p.m., parked my truck off a dirt road and hiked southeast. The coordinates led me through a narrow gap between two rock walls I would have missed if I hadn't been looking for it. The canyon. It was narrow, maybe 20 feet wide, with walls of white and gray striped rock rising 50 feet on either side. The floor was hard-packed dirt with scattered stones.
No vegetation.
No water. No life. I walked in about 100 yards and stopped. Set up a small camp. Laid out the traditional items. Waited for sunset. As twilight faded, the canyon changed. It started with movement in my peripheral vision. Shadows flickering along the canyon walls. But when I turned to look directly at them, they were still. The light continued to fade. Blue hour giving way to darkness. A sliver of moon provided just enough illumination to see shapes. And then I saw them clearly. Shadows. Hundreds of them. Moving along the canyon floor. Climbing the walls. Existing without any objects to cast them. Child-sized shadows, human-shaped, but moving with an eerie fluidity that living bodies don't have. They were playing, running, chasing each other, interacting like real children in a playground, except they were just silhouettes, dark shapes against darker stone. My heart was hammering. My hands shook as I stood up. I took a step forward into the canyon. Every shadow stopped moving. Simultaneously, instantly, hundreds of shadow children freezing in place. Then, as one, they all turned to face me. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, just stood there as hundreds of shadow children oriented toward me. No eyes visible.
No faces.
Just dark shapes, all perfectly still, all facing my direction. Then one separated from the group. Small, Emma's size, moving toward me with smooth, gliding motions. It approached slowly.
Non threatening.
Curious. It stopped 3 feet away. I could see its shape clearly now, head, torso, arms, legs. A perfect silhouette of a 3-year-old girl. The shadow reached out one hand. A small shadow hand, reaching for my leg. I didn't move, couldn't move. The shadow hand touched my shin. The cold was instant and absolute, like being plunged into Arctic water. Not painful, but shocking, overwhelming. The cold of deep space, the cold of absence. And then I heard it. Daddy, Emma's voice. Coming from the shadow, not echoing, not distorted. Her actual voice. My knees almost gave out. Emma, I whispered. The shadow moved closer, pressed against my leg like Emma does when she wants to be picked up. Daddy, you came. I told her you'd come. I told her you'd want to see me. This was Emma's shadow. The part of her that had slipped through the veil during the blood moon 3 years ago. The part that had been here, in this canyon, growing alongside her body, waiting. You're alive, I managed. I'm here, Daddy. I've always been here. The other me, the me you know, she's with you. But I'm here. And at 12, we get to be together. We get to be whole. I tried to speak but couldn't find words. More shadows approached. Dozens of them. Curious, not hostile. They clustered around me like children meeting a visiting parent. I recognized some of them. The shapes, the sizes. Benjamin White Buffalo. Lily Whirlwind. Michael Blackhorn. All the missing children I'd filed reports for. All here living as shadows. One shadow moved to a patch of smooth sand and began drawing with its finger. No physical finger, just the shadow of one, but it left marks in the sand nonetheless. Words, "Tell Mom I'm okay." Another shadow drew a heart shape. Another wrote, "Not scared anymore." They were communicating, showing me they were conscious, aware, choosing this existence. Emma's shadow pressed closer against my leg. "Daddy, are you sad?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm very sad. But why? I'm happy here. We're all happy. We're finally whole. In your world, I'm incomplete, half missing. But here I'm all of me. And when I turn 12, the other me gets to come here too. And then I'll be complete everywhere." I knelt down, trying to get closer to this shadow version of my daughter. "But you'll stop being human. You'll stop being the little girl I read bedtime stories to. The girl who loves mac and cheese and wants to be a veterinarian. I'll still be me, Daddy. Just more me. Complete me. The body you know is only half. I'm the other half. Together we're whole. Don't you want me to be whole?" Tears were running down my face. I stood in that canyon surrounded by shadow children who used to be human, and I understood. They weren't prisoners. They weren't suffering. They were finally complete. For 12 years, they'd lived in our world feeling empty, wrong, broken. And now they were whole. The shadows weren't the missing pieces. Our children were the missing pieces. The bodies were incomplete without the shadows. At age 12, they'd get the chance to merge, to become whole. And every single one of these children had chosen it. That's when I felt it. Presence. Massive. Ancient. Coming from deeper in the canyon. The shadow children all turned away from me, facing the same direction. And they bowed. Every single shadow child dropped to their knees and bowed. The temperature dropped another 20 degrees. My breath came out in white clouds. I turned slowly, 30 feet away, standing at the end of the canyon where it opened into a wider chamber, was a figure, 10 feet tall, humanoid but wrong, wearing traditional Lakota dress that seemed to shift between old and new, solid and transparent. Two faces. On the right side was a beautiful Lakota woman. Kind eyes, gentle expression, motherly. The left side was an exposed skull and rotting flesh. A socket empty, teeth bared in a permanent grin. Anyakite, and God help me, both of her faces were smiling. Anyakite stood perfectly still, watching me with eyes that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. The beautiful face had warm brown eyes. The corpse face had an empty socket that somehow still saw me. When she spoke, two voices came out. One gentle and feminine, one harsh and guttural, both saying the same words at the same time, creating an unsettling harmony. Sheriff David Two Elk, father of Emma Two Elk. You came to see if your daughter's soul suffers here. It wasn't a question. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. Every instinct in my body screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Anyakite took a step forward. The shadow children remained bowed, perfectly still. You have questions, the dual voices said. I will answer. I am not your enemy, Sheriff. I am balanced. I am at my threshold. I am the guardian between light and dark. I found my voice, though it came out weak. Why does this happen? Why are children born without shadows? Anyakite tilted both faces slightly, studying me. During the blood moon, the barrier between worlds thins. The membrane that separates physical and spiritual becomes permeable. When a child is born during this thinning, sometimes their soul, what you call the shadow, slips through before their body emerges. It is not intentional, not punishment, simply a consequence of cosmic alignment. The beautiful face smiled sadly. The corpse's face grinned wider. I catch these souls when they fall through. I raise them here in the shadow realm. I protect them. They grow alongside their bodies in your world, connected but separate. Both halves maturing, both halves waiting for the inevitable reunion. At age 12, I said, at age 12, the age of spiritual maturity in Lakota tradition, the transition from child to adult. That is when body and soul must reunite or both will die. It is cosmic law, older than your people, older than this land, older than humanity itself. The harsh voice grew stronger. You think I am cruel. You think I steal children. But look around you, Sheriff. Do these shadows seem imprisoned? Do they seem tortured? I looked at the shadow children still bowing around us. Emma's shadow pressed against my leg. The others had drawn messages of happiness in the sand. They seem content, I admitted. They are complete here, Anyakite said. In your world, they are fragments, half-beings. Your daughter Emma, the body you know, the girl you read to at night, she is incomplete. She has been incomplete since birth. She feels an emptiness she cannot name, a wrongness she cannot articulate. She talks to mirrors because that is the only time she sees herself. Both halves are visible simultaneously. The gentle voice took over. I do not cause suffering, Sheriff. I prevent it. Living without your shadow for 12 years is agony. These children endure it because they are young, resilient, adaptable. But at 12, the pain would become unbearable. The incompleteness would drive them mad. The reunion is mercy, but they stop being human, I said desperately. They become whatever this is, shadow beings. They can never come home, never grow up normally, never have lives. Both faces looked at me with something that might have been pity. Human is not the only way to exist, Sheriff. These children choose wholeness over humanity, and it is a choice. When they turn 12, I do not drag them here. I call them, I invite them, and every child comes willingly because they finally understand what they've been missing their entire lives. Emma is 3 years old. She can't make that kind of choice. She can't consent to giving up her humanity. She already made the choice, the harsh voice said. The moment she was born during the blood moon, the moment her soul slipped through to this side. She chose this path before she drew her first breath. Now, at 12, she will complete that choice. Reunite with her shadow. Become whole. I felt anger rising through my fear. I won't let you take her. I'll keep her safe. Lock her inside where your shadows can't reach her. Anyakite's expression changed. Both faces hardened. Others have tried. It always ends the same way. The entity raised one hand. The air around us shimmered, and suddenly I was seeing visions. Not in my mind, actually seeing them projected in the space between us. A house, lights blazing, a girl screaming inside, parents holding her, trying to keep her calm, then shadows pouring through the walls like water. Hundreds of them. The girl being pulled apart, literally torn between worlds as she fought. her screams echoing. The violent merging happened as she thrashed and sobbed. The vision changed. The same girl weeks later, standing in this canyon, looking at a man, her father, with black eyes full of hatred, saying, "You made it hurt. It didn't have to hurt." The vision faded. "If you cage your daughter, I will take her anyway," Anyakite's voice said. "But the merging will be violent, traumatic. She will reunite with her shadow while screaming in terror. And when the process is complete, she will remember your role in that pain." "Is that what you want for Emma?" "No," I choked out. "But I can't just let her go. I can't watch my daughter walk away from me forever." "Then I will show you the alternative." Another vision formed. Emma at 12 years old, understanding the truth. David and Sarah walk with her through the Badlands, holding her hands. Reaching this canyon at night, Emma sees her shadow self waiting. Emma letting go of their hands and running forward. The two Emmas embracing, body and shadow merging in a burst of light and darkness. Then a whole being standing there, neither fully human nor fully shadowed. Something beautiful and terrible and complete. Emma turned back to look at her parents, smiling, waving goodbye, walking deeper into the canyon. Peace. This is the choice every shadow parent must make, Anyakite said. Peace or violence, acceptance or resistance. There is no third path. I wiped tears from my face. Can't you just give her shadow back now? Let them merge while she's still young? Let her be whole as a human child. The gentle face shook its head. The merging can only happen at 12. Cosmic law. The spiritual threshold must be crossed. To attempt it earlier would kill both halves. I do not make the laws, Sheriff. I only enforce them. Who made the laws? Forces far older than me. The fundamental architecture of existence. Light and dark must remain separate until the appointed time. That is how balance is maintained. I felt defeated, exhausted. So there's nothing I can do? I just have to wait 9 years and then watch my daughter disappear? You can give her the greatest gift a parent can give, the beautiful face said softly. You can let her go with love instead of fear. You can make her transition peaceful instead of violent. You can be there at the end, holding her hand, telling her she's loved, letting her know that becoming whole is nothing to fear. The harsh voice added, or you can fight, cage her, make her final moments full of terror. Force me to take her violently, and live the rest of your life knowing you chose your own comfort over her peace. That's not fair, I said. No, both voices agreed. It is not fair, but it is balanced. And balance does not care about fairness. Emma's shadow pulled at my leg, drawing my attention down. Daddy, don't be sad. When I come here at 12, we'll be happy together. Me and the other me, complete. You'll still have memories of me, photos, stories. I won't really be gone, just different. But I'll never hold you again, never hear you laugh at cartoons, never watch you grow up and graduate and get married and have kids of your own. No, Emma's shadow said simply. But Daddy, I was never going to do those things anyway. Not the way you think. Because I'm not whole in your world. At 12, I'd start feeling the pull so strong it would hurt. I'd stop being able to live normally. I'd waste away trying to resist the calling. This way, I get to be complete. Really, truly complete. Isn't that better? I sank to my knees, sobbing. All the fight went out of me, because deep down, I knew Emma's shadow was right. I'd been watching my daughter for 3 years, seeing her talk to mirrors, seeing her sometimes stare into empty spaces with longing. She'd always been reaching for something I couldn't give her. Her other half, her completeness. Anyakite moved closer, stood directly in front of me, both faces looking down with expressions I couldn't read. Sheriff David Two Elk, I will give you 9 years with your daughter. 9 years to love her, to create memories, to prepare both of you for what must come. Use that time wisely. Do not spend it fighting the inevitable. Spend it cherishing what you have. And if I try to stop it anyway, I asked, if I can't accept this? The harsh voice answered, then I will mark you as a threat. And when Emma turns 12, I will take her the moment the calling begins. You will not get to say goodbye. You will not get to hold her one last time. She will simply vanish from your home, and you will spend the rest of your life wondering if she's still screaming. The gentle voice softened. I do not wish that fate for you, Sheriff. I have watched many shadow parents over the centuries. The ones who accept bring their children to the canyon. They cry, but they heal. The ones who fight. The beautiful face looked genuinely sad. They destroy themselves.
Suicide.
Madness. Attempts to burn this canyon that end in their own deaths. I have buried more shadow parents than shadow children. So my only real choice is acceptance or self-destruction. Yes, I looked around at all the shadow children. At Benjamin, who'd been here 30 years. At Lily and Michael and all the others. All happy, all complete, all choosing this existence over the incomplete life they'd had before. I looked down at Emma's shadow, still pressed against my leg. Will she remember me? After the merging? Yes, both halves carry the memories. She will remember being loved, being cherished, being David Two Elk's daughter. But she will also remember being here, being shadow, being complete. Both sets of memories will be true. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak. My whole body felt weak. I need time to think, to process this. You have 9 years, Anyakite said. But Sheriff, every day you spend fighting the truth is a day wasted. A day you could have spent loving your daughter without the shadow of denial hanging over you. The entity began to fade, not walking away, just becoming less solid, less present. I will not see you again until Emma turns 12. But know this, I am not your enemy. I am the guardian of lost souls, the keeper of balance, the mother of shadows. Your daughter's shadow has been mine to raise for 3 years. Soon the body will join us, and Emma Two Elk will finally be whole. Both faces smiled one last time. Make her last 9 years beautiful, Sheriff. That is all I ask. Then Anyakite was gone. The temperature returned to normal. The shadow children began moving again, returning to their play. Emma's shadow gave me one more cold touch against my leg. I love you, Daddy. Tell the other me I love her too. We'll see each other again when I'm 12. Then she glided away, joining the other shadow children in their eternal games. I stood alone in that canyon for another hour, watching them play, trying to comprehend what I'd learned, trying to accept the impossible choice I'd been given. Finally, I gathered my things and walked back to my truck. The drive home was a blur. I barely remember it. When I pulled into my driveway at 4 a.m., The house was dark. Sarah and Emma sleep peacefully inside, unaware that I'd just spoken with a cosmic entity, unaware that our daughter's fate was already sealed. I sat in the truck for a long time, watching the first light of dawn break over the horizon. 9 years. That's all I had. 9 years to love my daughter before she walked away from humanity forever. I didn't go inside right away. Just sat in my truck watching the sun come up over Rosebud, trying to figure out how to live with what I now knew. The front door opened. Sarah stood there in her robe, squinting against the early light. She walked over to the truck, knocked on the window. I rolled it down. "You've been sitting out here for 20 minutes, she said. "Bad shift?" "Yeah, bad shift." She studied my face. I saw something there. "David, what's wrong?" "Really wrong." I almost told her everything. Almost unloaded the whole impossible truth right there in the driveway. But I looked at her worried eyes and realized she wasn't ready. Maybe she'd never be ready, and I couldn't force this knowledge on her. "Just tired," I said. "Long drive."
I'm okay.
She didn't believe me, but she nodded. "Come inside. I'll make coffee." I followed her into the house. The smell of home hit me. Coffee brewing, Sarah's shampoo, Emma's toys scattered across the living room floor. Normal life. The life I had 9 more years to live before everything changed. Emma was still asleep. I stood in her doorway watching her breathe. Her small body curled under her unicorn blanket. She looked so human, so completely, perfectly human. No one looking at her would ever guess she was incomplete. That half of her was living in a canyon in the Badlands, waiting patiently for reunion. I made a decision then. I was 9 years old. I wasn't going to waste them fighting the inevitable. I wasn't going to spend them researching ceremonies and rituals and desperate attempts to change cosmic law. I was going to use them to love my daughter. Over the next weeks, I started making changes. Small ones at first. I cut back my hours at work, stopped volunteering for overtime shifts, started coming home for dinner every night. Sarah noticed but didn't question it. She seemed happy I was around more. I started doing things with Emma. Real things. Not just being present while she played, actually engaging. We started a routine. Every Saturday morning, just the two of us, we'd go somewhere. The library, the park, driving around the reservation looking at horses and buffalo. Emma loved it. She'd chatter the whole time, telling me stories about her imaginary friends, about school, about everything in her 3-year-old world. And I listened, really listened, memorizing her voice, her laugh, the way she pronounced certain words wrong. I started taking photos, hundreds of them. Emma is playing. Emma eating. Emma is sleeping. Emma just exists. I filled hard drives with images of my daughter, because I knew that after 12, all I'd have left were photographs and memories. Sarah asked me once why I was taking so many pictures. "I just want to remember everything," I said. She smiled. "She's only 3, David. We have years ahead of us." 9 years, I thought. We have exactly 9 years. I didn't tell Sarah about Anyakite, didn't tell her about Shadow Canyon or the choice I'd made, but I started preparing her in small ways. I'd mention Lakota stories about shadows, about spirits, about the belief that we're all connected to something larger than ourselves. She'd listen politely the way she always did when I talked about traditional beliefs. She respected the culture but didn't fully embrace it. She was more practical, more grounded in the physical world. One night, about 2 months after my visit to the canyon, I found Emma standing in the bathroom. 3 in the morning, talking to the mirror. I stood in the hallway listening. "Will it hurt?" Emma asked the mirror. A pause. She was listening to something I couldn't hear. "Okay. And Daddy will be there?" Another pause. "Good. I want him to be there. I don't want him to be sad though. My heart broke. Can you tell him that? That I'll be okay? That we'll be happy?" She waited, then nodded. "Okay. Thank you, other me. I love you too." She turned and saw me standing in the hallway. Smiled.
Daddy.
I was just talking to myself. "I know, sweetheart. What were you talking about?" "Just stuff. She says when I'm 12 it won't hurt. She says you'll be there with me. She says you'll be sad, but that's okay. People are sad when things change." I knelt down, pulled her into a hug, hold her tight. "I love you, Emma. So much. I love you too, Daddy. The other me loves you too. She says you met her. In the dark place. She says you were nice. I try to be. She says don't worry. Everything's going to be okay." I carried Emma back to bed, tucked her in, stayed with her until she fell asleep. Then I went to my home office and did something I'd been avoiding. I started writing. Not a police report, not an official document, just a journal, a record of Emma's life. Everything I wanted to remember, everything I wanted her to know about how much she was loved. I wrote about the day she was born during the blood moon, about Sarah's complications, about holding Emma for the first time and feeling like my whole world had shifted into place. I wrote about her first steps, her first words, the time she tried to feed spaghetti to the dog, the way she laughed at cartoons, her obsession with unicorns, her kindness to other kids at daycare. I wrote every week, sometimes every day, building a record of a life, of a childhood, of a father's love for his daughter. The years started passing. Emma turned 4, then 5, then 6. With each birthday, I felt time accelerating, felt the weight of what was coming. But I kept my promise to myself. I didn't fight it. I used the time. When Emma was 7, she started asking more direct questions. "Daddy, why don't I have a shadow like other kids?" We were in the backyard. She'd noticed it herself. Saw other children casting shadows during recess and realized she didn't. I'd prepared for this conversation. "You're special, Emma. You're different in a way that's hard to explain. But being different isn't bad. The other me in the mirror has a shadow. She's the shadow. I know. She says when I turn 12, I get to be with her. We get to be together. Be whole." That's right. Emma thought about this for a long moment. "Will you be sad when I go?" I knelt down to her level, looked into those beautiful brown eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. I'll be very sad. But I'll also be happy that you'll be complete, that you'll finally feel whole. Both things can be true. The other me says you're brave. She says most daddies try to stop it. But you're letting me go because you love me." Tears were running down my face. "I love you more than anything in this world, Emma. That's why I'm letting you be who you're meant to be." She hugged me. "I love you too, Daddy, and I'll still love you after. The other me promises. We'll both remember you, always." When Emma turned 8, I finally told Sarah. She didn't believe me at first. I thought I was having a breakdown, having some kind of delayed stress reaction from years of difficult police work. She wanted me to see a therapist, but I showed her the evidence, the photographs, the videos. Emma's lack of shadow is documented from every angle. The old case files of missing children, all shadowless, all born during blood moons. Margaret White Buffalo's photos of Benjamin. Thomas Lone Hill's testimony. Took weeks. Sarah researched independently. I talked to my elders. Talked to families who'd lost shadowless children. Talked to Emma herself, who explained the whole thing with the casual acceptance of a child who'd always known her fate. Finally, Sarah accepted it, and she grieved, went through all the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression. I held her through it, reminded her we still had 4 years. 4 years to make beautiful memories. Eventually, Sarah reached acceptance. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. The three of us became a tighter unit. We traveled together, visited every part of the reservation, took Emma to see the ocean, the mountains, national parks. We filled her life with experiences. Emma was happy, always happy. She knew what was coming and she wasn't afraid. She talked to her shadow self every night in mirrors. They were preparing together, getting ready for the merging, building a relationship across the veil. When Emma turned 11, we started preparing more actively. Sarah and I talked to Thomas Lone Hill together. He guided us through what the final day would be like, how to make it peaceful, how to be present without making Emma afraid. Margaret White Buffalo visited us, shared her experiences, showed Emma photos of Benjamin as a shadow child, happy and complete. It helped. Emma saw proof that the other side wasn't darkness or death. It was just different. Emma's 12th birthday fell on October 23rd. A blood moon night, exactly 12 years after her birth. We spent the day as a family, made her favorite breakfast, pancakes with strawberries, gave her gifts, watched her favorite movies, had a party with friends and family who knew the truth. Everyone cried but tried to stay strong for Emma. She was excited, not scared. Excited like a kid about to go on a big adventure. That evening, the three of us drove to Shadow Canyon. Thomas Lone Hill met us there. So did Margaret White Buffalo and Grace Whirlwind, who wanted to witness another child crossing peacefully, the way her daughter hadn't been able to. We arrived at the canyon entrance just after sunset. Emma got out of the truck holding both our hands, looking up at us with complete trust. "It's time," she said simply. We walked into the canyon together. As the light faded, the shadows appeared, hundreds of them, and at the front, Emma's shadow self. 3 years old in shape but grown to 12 alongside Emma's body. Growing parallel, waiting. Emma let go of our hands, ran forward. The two Emmas met in the center of the canyon. Body and shadow, light and dark, physical and spiritual. They embraced. There was a flash, not light, not darkness, but both simultaneously, like the sun and moon occupying the same space. Impossible but real. When it faded, there was one Emma. Whole, complete, neither fully human nor fully shadowed. Something in between. She turned back to us. Her eyes were different, darker, but still hers. She smiled. "I can feel everything now," she said. "Both sides. All the memories. All the feelings. Daddy, Mom, I'm complete. Finally complete. Thank you for letting me go. Sarah was sobbing. I was trying not to. We love you. I managed to say. I love you too. Both of us love you. Always will. Emma waved. Then she turned and walked deeper into the canyon, joining the other shadow children, becoming part of their eternal existence. We stood there until dawn, watching the shadows play, catching glimpses of Emma among them, happy and whole and free. When the sun came up, the shadows faded. We drove home in silence. The house felt empty. Emma's room is full of toys and clothes she'd never use again. But Sarah and I didn't take them down, kept everything exactly as it was. A shrine to a childhood, to a life that ended and transformed. It's been 6 months since Emma merged. The grief comes in waves. Some days I'm okay. Some days I can barely breathe. Sarah is the same. But we've seen Emma since. 3 times. Standing in remote places at night. Still 12. Still smiling. She waves when she sees us. Sometimes she speaks, telling us she's happy, that she's whole, that she doesn't regret her choice. I'm still the sheriff of Rosebud, but I do my job differently now. When families report shadowless children, I don't tell them everything at once. I guide them gently, give them time to process. Eventually, I show them what I know, help them understand they can't fight it, only accept it. I've walked 5 other families through the process now, helped them prepare for the day their children merge. It doesn't make the grief easier, but it makes it bearable, purposeful. Sarah went back to teaching. She talks about Emma openly, doesn't hide what happened. The other teachers thought she'd lost her mind at first, but the families who've experienced this know. They understand. There's a quiet community of shadow parents on Rosebud now. We support each other. Sometimes I visit Shadow Canyon at night, sit at the entrance and watch the shadow children play. Emma always comes to greet me, sits beside me as a shadow, that familiar cold touch against my leg. We talk. I tell her about my day. She tells me about her existence, about the freedom of being complete, about how time works differently for shadow beings, about how she's both 12 and ageless simultaneously. Are you happy, Daddy? She asked me last week. I'm learning to be, I said. It's hard, but I'm learning. Good. The other me, the one you knew, she'd want you to be happy. I know. I want that too. She leaned against me. You're brave, Daddy. Braver than most. You let me go. That took real love. I didn't have a choice. You did. You could have fought, made it violent, but you chose peace. For me, that's love. When I drive home from those visits, I think about Anyakite's words, about balance, about how some things can't be changed, only accepted. I think about the choice every shadow parent faces. Fight and lose everything, or accept and keep something, memories, peace, the knowledge that your child is whole even if they're not human anymore.
I chose acceptance.
And Emma chose completeness. She's not dead. She's not gone. She's just different, living in shadow, existing between worlds, complete in ways I'll never fully understand. I miss her every day, miss her physical presence. I miss her laughter in our house, miss bedtime stories and Saturday morning adventures. But I also know she's happy, really, truly happy. finally feeling whole after 12 years of incompleteness she couldn't name. If you're watching this and you have a shadowless child, I can't tell you what to do. Can't tell you how to process this impossible reality. But I can tell you this. Love them while you have them. Don't waste years fighting what you can't change. Use the time. Make memories. And when the day comes, because it will come, let them go with love instead of fear. That's all we can do as parents. Love them enough to let them become what they're meant to be, even when it breaks our hearts. Emma was born during a blood moon. She lived 12 years incomplete, and now she's whole. That's not the ending I wanted, but it's the ending that had to happen. And somehow I'm learning to live with that. My name is David Tuelk. I'm the sheriff of Rosebud Sioux territory, and I'm a shadow parent. If you need to talk to someone who understands, leave a comment. We're out here. We see you. We know your pain. And we're here to tell you, acceptance is possible. Peace is possible, even after losing a child to the shadows.